Picture this. You're standing on the blistering hot banks of the ancient Nile River, about 4,500 years ago. Right in front of you, a colossal 2.5-ton limestone block is just gliding across the desert landscape. It's wild to think about. Today, we're diving deep into an explainer on the real engineering and logistics behind the ancient Egyptian pyramids. We're completely tossing out those old myths about magic or, aliens, and we're looking at the staggering true story of human ingenuity behind one of the greatest mega projects in history.
Because think about it. To build King Khufu's ultimate monument, the Egyptians had to move 2.3 million of these massive stones. Honestly, dragging just one of these blocks through deep, dry desert sand without any modern machinery, that should have been an absolute logistical nightmare. But the secret to how they actually pulled this off comes down to a really stunning yet incredibly simple grasp of physics. So, modern physicists recently proved something the ancient Egyptians already had figured out. If you pour a highly specific amount of water, we're talking exactly 2 to 5% of the sand's volume, right in front of a wooden transport sledge, it creates these things called capillary bridges between the grains of sand. This brilliant wet sand technique literally stopped the sand from piling up and reduced friction by a massive 55%. Suddenly, a relatively small, well-coordinated crew could just haul these mountains of stone straight across the plateau.
All right, let's look at the first major piece of this puzzle, the lost waterways supply chain, and how the Nile literally powered this entire operation.
You see, hauling those blocks on land was really just the final step. Thanks to some cutting-edge satellite radar, we now know they used a massive, now vanished branch of the Nile, called the Aramat branch, to transport these stones. And the absolute masterstroke here was the Rosh-Hashanah Khufu harbor. They literally terraformed the landscape, dredging this colossal artificial basin 8 meters deep. Because the Giza Plateau sits 15 meters above sea level, they brilliantly used the annual 7-meter flood of the Nile as a giant natural hydraulic lift. This allowed them to float heavily loaded barges right up to the very edge of the construction site.
And we actually have a jaw-dropping first-hand account of this daily grind. Discovered near the Red Sea in 2013, the Diary of Mer is this 4,500-year-old papyrus logbook written by an inspector who managed a team of about 40 boatmen. When you look at their schedule, it's a remarkably rapid turnaround. They'd quarry the stone at Tura, sail down the canals, unload at Giza, and then head back upriver, all in just 4 days. It was a fiercely disciplined, perfectly synchronized machine.
So we're not just looking at a local building site here. This was a sprawling international supply chain. The core limestone was local, sure, but those brilliant white casing stones, they were shipped 20 kilometers away from Tura. And what about the massive 80-ton granite relieving beams for the King's Chamber? Those were floated over 800 kilometers from Aswan. They were even coordinating fleets across the Mediterranean to bring in Lebanese cedar. We are talking about supply chain management that legitimately rivals any modern skyscraper construction today.
Which brings us to part 2, organizing the workforce for this ultimate ancient megaproject.
Now, for centuries, there's been this Hollywood-fueled myth that the pyramids were built by millions of enslaved people toiling under the crack of a whip. But modern archaeology completely destroys that narrative. The reality? This workforce was made up of highly paid, exceptionally well-fed, and intensely proud, skilled laborers. They worked in modular divisions, basically craft guilds, and they'd give themselves these really spirited team names, like the Friends of Khufu, or, my personal favorite, the Drunkards of Menkaure.
To really grasp the sheer administrative genius of this whole operation, just look at the food. They baked 21,000 loaves of bread every single day, alongside massive quantities of prime beef, sheep, and beer, just to fuel an elite temporary city of up to 30,000 workers. So this wasn't some brutal act of coercion. This was a highly sophisticated, state-sponsored engineering operation that essentially unified an entire nation.
Moving on to part 3, engineering the ascent. Basically, how did they raise millions of tons of stone?
Okay, once the stones actually reached the base, how on earth did they lift 6 million tons into the sky? Let's look at the classic theory first. A giant, straight external ramp. Sounds logical, right? But there's a massive mathematical flaw here. To keep the incline at a manageable 8% so the workers could actually drag the stones up, a ramp reaching the 481-foot summit would have to be over a mile long. That would require nearly as much building material as the pyramid itself. So a straight ramp going all the way up is just mathematically implausible for the upper levels.
So, if a mile-long ramp didn't go up the outside, what was the solution? Well, if you notice the anomalies in the exterior step structures, these specific notches and gaps left behind, they give us some massive clues. These physical details led French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin to a pretty radical hypothesis, that the builders actually integrated hidden mechanisms directly into the structure itself to maneuver those massive blocks around the corners.
Houdin's 3D models propose this really breathtaking solution, an internal corkscrew ramp. Picture a hidden tunnel spiraling upward just inside the outer edges of the pyramid. It's an absolutely brilliant idea. It would only take up a tiny fraction of the pyramid's total volume, just about 0.25%, and it would allow the workers to drag sledges up a steady 7% gradient, all while being completely shielded from that blazing desert sun.
Today, engineers widely agree on a highly credible hybrid theory that highlights the builders' incredible adaptability. First, they likely used a short, straight external ramp to build the bulky bottom third of the pyramid. Then, as the structure narrowed, they would have dismantled that outer ramp and recycled those very same stones to build the upper sections from the inside out using that spiral ramp. Finally, to get around those sharp corners inside the spiral, they used open corner notches equipped with wooden cranes and counterweights. It is an absolute masterclass in adaptive engineering.
Finally, let's look at part 4, scanning the hidden voids. This is where modern tech meets ancient stone. To actually prove these theories, we have to slingshot right into the 21st century. The International Scan Pyramids Project is using something called cosmic ray muon radiography. Basically, by tracking subatomic particles that are constantly raining down from space, scientists can measure how they lose energy as they pass through solid structures. It's effectively taking a giant X-ray of a 4,500-year-old mountain, mapping out hidden voids inside without leaving a single scratch on the ancient limestone.
And the results? Honestly, they are earth-shattering. Back in 2017, the team made a discovery that completely stunned the scientific community. They found a massive 30-meter-long hidden corridor directly above the Grand Gallery. This is a space that has been sealed in total darkness since the moment the pyramid was built. As Khaled Alanadi, the former Minister of Antiquities, pointed out, this new void is larger than any known cavity inside, and it is completely rewriting our understanding of the pyramid's internal architecture.
Which brings us to a truly incredible moment in history that is unfolding right now. Egyptologists expect this massive 30-meter void to finally be unsealed and revealed to the world in 2026. The suspense here is just immense. Is this part of that internal ramp system we talked about? Or could this hidden passage lead directly to the true, undiscovered burial chamber of King Khufu himself? I mean, his mummy has never been found, and this could very well be the gateway.
Ultimately, the Great Pyramid of Giza was not built by magic, and it certainly wasn't built by aliens. It is the breathtaking masterpiece of a unified civilization pushing the absolute limits of human logistics, mathematics, and engineering. As we wait for these major revelations coming in 2026, it leaves us with one incredibly awe-inspiring question. After 4,500 years, what other brilliant ancient scientific secrets are still just waiting in the dark?